So, but let's give a round of applause for Lindsey.
Well, thank you for having me as we're getting this set up. So I just got back from Antarctica at the end of February. I was down there working retail, which sounds a little crazy because why would you have a retail store in Antarctica? But actually when the scientists forget a toothbrush, they need to be able to get it from somewhere. And so that's what I was down there doing, and there's actually 2 people that staff that store, but there's a million other jobs down there, so I'll kind of get into that as we get going, and I'll talk about some of that first. So basically any job that you need for a tiny town is available down there. We have a hairdresser even, because somebody's got to be down there to cut hair. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. I'm so sorry. So, first of all, I just want to preface that the views expressed in this slideshow don't reflect the views of the United States Antarctic Program, the NSF, or anyone else that works down there. This is from my personal experience. And then we have some lingo that you might hear me use. Some of it's not that important, but the word ice just means Antarctica in and of itself. So if I say I just got off the ice, that's that. We have some other terms like galley, which is our cafeteria. Mid-rats means night shift workers. The big red jacket is big red. A couple other things, but we won't get too into the grit of that. So just to picture where we're at, because most of us don't see Antarctica as it usually looks on a map, because it's just a little ribbon at the bottom. So I was on the side that's closest to New Zealand, so right about here on technically an island in the Pacific Ocean. It's covered around by ice, so there's not a lot of fresh ocean next to it, even though it is in the Pacific Ocean. And then as you see, we get a little bit closer to South America right here, and up there is closer to Africa. So the United States has 3 science bases down there. All of the bases down there are science bases. They are not military bases, though the military does help support them. So the 3 U.S. stations are down here where I was. This is the biggest one. It's about 1,000 people in the summer. So about half the size of Gold Beach. Or in the winter, it's 150 people. So right now they're getting much smaller. And then South Pole is up there in the middle of the continent. I was actually about 850 miles away, which is from here to Mexico. So it seems like I was close by, but I was not. It's much colder there. It's much more polarizing, so to speak. And then the weather. So right now they are moving into the austral winter, backwards of us. Their winter gets much darker all the time, and they have the chance of seeing auroras. And then their summer is from October to February, so that's when I was down there. It's 24/7 daylight, which is surprisingly easy to sleep through when you're tired all the time. And then some just general information about like the temperature. It's a lot less cold than you would think in the summer. An average day was maybe about 20 degrees. My coldest day was -40 with wind chill. And then our hottest day was like 35. It was actually colder in Gold Beach when you guys had all that snow than it was in Antarctica. We had less snow than you too. So this is an example of some of the weather things that can happen down there. So this is called a sundog. And a sundog is basically what happens when there's ice particles in the air. It reflects the sun back in certain spots. So we get the halos, and then sometimes if you're lucky, you get a reflection of the sun. This is not my photo, but most of them are. Well, you can't quite see it, but there's a halo right up there around the sun. There's another example, but it's hard to see on this light. So this was our first sunset of the year, and it was not a typical sunset. It did not make it go any darker. It just kind of went and straight back up for the rest of the day. This was at 2 a.m. We stayed up specifically to see this. So that was a really exciting event. Right now they are, actually this is the day after 2. They had 2 sunsets technically in a 24-hour period because it went down at 11, or went down at 12 a.m. and then it went back down at 11. So they had it in less than 24 hours. That's an example of the sun starting to set through town. You can see that the color is changing drastically. And then some of my favorite icicles in town, because we're from Gold Beach and I don't often get to see icicles. So this was really exciting for me. This one was like 4 feet long, and that one got to like 12 feet long. By the time it was done, it reached the ground. And I did not get to see these, but they're experiencing them right now, all the auroras, the southern lights. Right now, too, at the South Pole, they've covered the windows for their cafeteria, so that way there's no light pollution going out to see those auroras, so that way the cameras can capture all of them.
Is it the same as you see in
It's
Alaska?
similar. It's a different light pattern. So the aurora borealis is the northern hemisphere and the aurora australis is the southern hemisphere. So I'm not quite sure. I assume it's just a different streak of that, but I'm sure it's the same makeup. Probably not scientifically totally accurate, but so I lived in McMurdo Station, which is once again the biggest station. Anthony Bourdain actually visited at one point, and this was his quote about it, that it looks like a mining camp, and it's not very pretty to look at. But we are located on this island, as I was talking about earlier. We're at the very end here, right next to the New Zealand base. They're about 3 miles away from us. And we actually have a active volcano just right next to us on our island. And then as you face towards the top of the screen, you can see the ice shelf, which is the biggest ice shelf in the world. It kind of never melts, except parts of it do, which makes up our bay over here. And then that's a picture of our ice shelf and the town itself. So this big blue building is kind of the hub of activity. Over to the right, you can see all the dorms and everything. And then just spread out are different work centers, and there's a lot of construction happening down there right now. They're working on updating the facilities because a lot of them have not been updated since like the 60s. So they tore down a dorm when I was down there, and they're working on rebuilding. Another picture of the town. These are actually, we have some windmills up there to help generate power. And right here, there's a golf ball shape. We call them golf balls, they are not. They actually house these satellite dishes that help track the satellites to get our internet and other things. NASA runs those, which is really cool. I got to take a tour of one of them. Another picture of town from the ice, because we were able to go on a hike that was on the ice sheet, which I'll show more pictures of here soon. And that's just, there's lots of photos of town. It does kind of look like a mining camp. So work life, we did work 54 hours a week, 6 days a week, everybody across the board, no matter what you worked in. And like I said, there's a million different jobs down there. We have firefighters, chefs, janitors, drivers, people that work in hair, media editors, broadcast engineers. We have a radio station down there, if you can believe it. So we don't get regular radio, so we have to make do. And then we have different shifts of workers. So people work during the day, but it's 24/7 daylight at night, so they take advantage of that as well.
Lindsey,
Yeah.
you showed some tundra there. What plant life is there?
Very little. There are some fungi and some lichens. I saw maybe one lichen on a hill. Yeah, very little. As you move towards the dry valleys, I think there's more. And we'll go over some of the animal life and stuff too. Some of the science that's being done down there. But I think there's like 3 native plants to Antarctica, and they're fungi and lichens. Yeah. There used to be more, and so they do find fossils every once in a while. There's some fossilized tree remains in our lab, a few other things, but not much right now.
Do they have medical facilities?
We do, yeah. We have a whole medical facility. I think there's 4 doctors. There's a pharmacist in there. They also bring down a physical therapist in the summer season, and then they also have some mental health people down there. So they have a therapist and a couple other people that help and kind of provide those services. So you can schedule a doctor's appointment at any time. We don't really have a dentist. They bring one down in February to help physically qualify people if they're staying over the winter. But they also make us physically qualified before we head down because they don't want any unexpected surprises coming up, like somebody needs something removed. They can do some surgeries, but they prefer not to. But you can be life flighted out as well, and you can get your medical stuff done, and then if you're fine, you can be flown back. So there are some options. So this is the retail store. It's pretty small. That's one of our part-time employees because we are allowed to hire those, which is nice. It makes our lives a little bit easier because even though it's a small store, there's still 1,000 people that could come in a day. That's more pictures of that. Some of
Is
our
everything free?
I wish. That joke was made a lot. So we had sweatshirts, toothbrushes, snacks, that sort of stuff. Kind of like a small supermarket. And over to our left, we had to do beverage pull too, so all the beverages on station. We pulled all of that champagne for New Year's Eve, and we kind of overcompensated on accident, so we built a throne out of it, and that's one of the janitors that helps us move it. He is sitting on that throne. That's the outside of the store. We also had fun. We had everyone draw their best penguin on our whiteboard just to see what would happen. I kept everyone going for a while. The happiest team, I feel like, on station are our janitors, which sounds a little backwards, but they have a great boss and it helps keep their momentum up. So every time it would snow, the ground would get disgusting and a bunch of dirt would be brought in. And so they would spell words out before they swept it up completely. They also had the best costumes. They had wacky days where they would dress in costumes while they cleaned, which was always really fun. Oh, I guess I skipped the other photo I had of that, but this is our broadcast engineer. He ran our radio station and also provided us with movies on our TV every day. And so we had a couple regular TV channels provided through the Navy, but we also had some channels where he would just put one movie on loop all day, and then the next day he would change it to a different movie. So that was fun. And there's the janitors again in their costumes. Some of our galley staff over here, and then my co-worker in the retail store over there on the right. Just some work stuff because we do quite a bit of that. These are our firefighters. You can't see on the screen, but they actually let the trucks stay dirty down there versus most fire departments where you'd see a really clean vehicle. There's no point in wasting the water. Half the time when you get it on the truck, it's just going to freeze or something's going to happen to it. So it's kind of, they leave it a little dirtier than we would normally. There's the fire department truck again. They have a few vehicles, and there are very few fires in Antarctica, but we did have a couple, and they're also there to help respond to fire alarms, to do some fire walkthroughs and make sure those buildings don't burn down because it is a desert down there. And if they did burn down, things would happen. It would go very quickly. They also help with like some health stuff. So if somebody does need help, they can help transport them to the medical facilities. That's one of my friends, Wes. He's a firefighter. He was working at our music festival down there that night, making sure that everyone was staying safe, which I'll go over the music festival here in a few minutes. So the whole reason all of us are down there is to support science. No matter what you work in, it is a science base. And so in order to kind of help us with that, they do weekly science talks on Sundays, which was really cool. Things you didn't even know they could study, they were studying down there. They also had some big projects that I guess were kind of the biggest impact on things I saw, and I'll go over some of those. None of these are my photos, just as a preface. So this is a long duration balloon. It starts over here, that's where they're filling it up, but it actually goes all the way over to where that vehicle is over there, and that vehicle's got a giant camera suspended from that, so they're going to send that up into space. Actually, they've already sent it up into space. I think for 16 days is how long it was up there, and they sent it as far out as they are able to take photos of the light in the universe. So basically how they described it was it's taking photos of the universe's like baby years. So they can tell by the way the light is up there that this is kind of like the start of all of that, which is really cool. And you can see based on the trucks how big that balloon is, and that's just the beginning of it. It was also kind of funny because it happened right around the time all that spy balloon stuff was happening, and we were laughing because we were like, oh, well, we just sent our giant camera balloon out into space. Also, this is the biggest form of megafauna that Antarctica has. Some of you might have seen these before. They're affectionately called water bears, but their technical name is tardigrades. And they are the creature that you see living in some of the harshest environments. They are down in Antarctica in abundance. They live in some of the highest salt water on Earth. So they study how they manage to survive and also kind of how climate change is affecting them. So they actually brought some of these back to a lab And the guy said, you know, they can survive harsh Antarctica winters, but I managed to kill them all in my lab. So lots of studies there. I wish I had more detail on how far that's progressing along, but
Lindsay, how big are they?
tiny, microscopic. There are a few bugs in Antarctica, but they're even little, minuscule, and you rarely see them. We have no flies, no spiders, no mosquitoes, nothing. And if one does get on the continent or our food shipments or anything, they get killed. So that way we don't let anything invade and change the whole biography of the, well, I guess that's not quite right, but it doesn't change anything that way. These are the blood falls. I did not get to see these, but I do have quite a few friends that did. So these are over in the Dry Valley area, and I have a map of that in a second. But basically what's happening here is there's water flowing underneath this glacier that is so high in iron that once it reaches that oxygen, it rusts. And so this is something that they have been actively studying, especially with its high salt content right here next to this, I think it's a lake right here, Taylor Lake. But there's a lot happening there with the salt content. And this is a picture of kind of where it's based. So up here is the glacier, and way down there is the tiny spot of the blood falls. And then throughout here, pretty close to this, are the dry valleys, which I have a picture of as well. So although Antarctica is 98% ice, 2% of it is not, and those areas are really something that scientists are trying to study because they believe they're the closest place on Earth to Mars. So the wind type, the lack of absolutely anything on the ground there, and they say it's completely silent when there is no wind. So they're using that as kind of a home base to study how things might happen if we do go to Mars. And then places and additional activities. So Antarctica we think of as barren and really, you know, might be outside all the time. That can be true if you're in a field camp, but within town there's a whole bunch of places you can go. This is our coffee house. It's super homey inside, it's all wood-based. It's a great place to hang out. They do make coffee. You can volunteer to be a barista and they'll tip you. You don't get paid for it, but you do get tipped. You can order a vanilla latte just like anywhere else. This is our main building. It houses our cafeteria, our store, a lot of office buildings, and some dorms. And then in front of it, I always thought this was funny, is our bus stop. We do have shuttles that will pick you up and take you where you need to go based on work or just recreationally. This is our galley, so it's a big open cafeteria like most. I was really excited on the right because it was my last midnight snack in the galley. It is open 24/7, and they have lunch for the night shift workers. But other than that, there's 3 meals. All the food is free. Lots of good things happening in that galley. I'll show some of the food here in a minute. This is one of our dorm lounges. It's a good place to hang out. This is our chapel, closer to our sunset time period. It's one of my favorite buildings to take photos of, but mostly because the sun sets right behind it. But also it is beautiful compared to most of the buildings on station. Inside of the chapel, there's penguins above the doors. And typically there's a historical chalice held here. They do take it home in the winter and store it in New Zealand and then bring it back every summer. And they do a lot of non-denominational services, some Catholic services, some Jewish services, a couple other things. I think this is where they hold the AA meetings as well. So lots of services offered here.
only one minister for all these different services?
Yeah, they bring a couple in per season. It's a pretty sought after job. I believe it's the, can't remember which branch of the military it is that provides the chaplains. I think it's military. But it's pretty coveted. We had 3 for the season, but they weren't ever on base at the same time. It's also the best place to go penguin watching. They keep binoculars up here in the window, and because the penguins all like to be straight out here, so do the whales, and it's a little bit warmer than standing outside to do it. Also, if any of you need to leave, I know we're closer to time, so this is the New Zealand base right next door. They keep all of their buildings bright green, so it looks a little bit more, I don't know, less crazy than our base does. And then they think they're funny, they have an American parking spot with a bent up parking meter. This was one of the coolest experiences down on ice. So it is an observation tube, and basically they drill into the ice and install this tube, and you can go down below it and see what it looks like underneath the ice. It's very small. A couple people did get stuck. And so even at my height, and I'm not nearly that big compared to some of the men, my shoulders were touching the back of the tube. You climb down a ladder. And Search and Rescue finally decided that they would stop letting it be offered in the middle of the night because they were sick of waking up at 3 a.m. to go rescue people. So that's what it looks like from the top. And then when you're in the bottom, they couldn't see me because it was too dark. It was probably about a 20-foot climb down. You're probably about 12 foot below the ice.
Wow.
So that's what it looks like from the bottom, and that's what it looks like looking out. So this is all ground out here. You're quite a bit above it, but you can see the ice crystals forming underneath the ice. Sometimes you can see seals. More often than not, you could just hear them. A few of my friends saw seals. I never did. I went down 3 times. But it was really cool to hear them. It sounded otherworldly. It sounds like whales. Some more pictures of that. Believe it or not, too, there's quite a few creatures that live down here. I have pictures of them. Sea stars, sea spiders, sea slugs. Lots of things that live down there that are way brighter than you would imagine.
Is this the natural color?
Yeah,
Purple?
it's kind of like that dark blue, purple,
Yeah.
green.
Wow.
The closer you look at the shadows, it gets a lot blacker out there.
Uh-huh.
And it definitely depends on where the sun is in the sky, depending on how it's filtering through the ice. And you have to let your eyes adjust because you're coming out from being up there in that full sunshine, and then you get down there and you can't see anything.
Oh, okay.
That's just a picture of the royal bladder, and then someone thought it was funny to write free Wi-Fi up in the background. And that's a picture of the bottom half of it outside of the ice, which is kind of terrifying to look at in retrospect because I didn't see this beforehand. So we were just sitting in this tiny little area underneath the ice. Okay, wildlife, this is what everyone wants to know about. So we did have penguins, a couple different kinds. I'll show the pictures of them. We also had whales, a couple seals. Most of these seals did not live near me. I don't live near the leopard seals or the elephant seals, but I did live next to one called the Waddell, and they're pretty calm. They're not real attacky based. And then we had a few fish and some other animals underneath the sea ice, which we'll show photos of. So these are the seals. I guess it's hard to see that picture from back there, but they were just having babies when we got down there, which was really cool because even though we have seals here in Gold Beach, you don't see them on the ice giving birth. So they were just having birth. We got to see one actually starting her birthing journey, and we were going to wait, and she was taking forever, and it was freezing. So we did not get to see her actually give birth, but she was in the process of it. This is a bird called a skua. They're giant seagulls, basically. They're awful. Skua means thief in one of the Aborigine languages down there. And so I have another photo set of it. It's a little bit more graphic, but it really gets their character underway. This is one of them eating a baby. So they do not care about anything else besides themselves most of the times, and they can remember faces. So if they don't like you, much like a crow, they're not going to like you for a long time. They used to dive bomb for food a lot, but more often than not now people don't really bring food outside to avoid that. This is a picture of everyone watching penguins and whales. Whenever there's penguins on the ice, everyone moves out to go see them. So I thought this photo angle was funny because we were all just lined up with binoculars trying to find things. These are the emperor penguins. They are about 3 feet tall. They're much bigger, and they're a lot more graceful than the other kind we had down there. They kind of lumber along. They don't really fall a lot. Versus these guys are terribly awkward and clumsy. They're about 1 foot tall, and they do fall down a lot. This is right before they started molting for the year. They do molt all at once, so that way they can get it all done because they can't go in the water when their feathers start falling out.
They fall because of Imbalanced?
I don't even know. They're just incredibly clumsy. I have a video of them running away from a helicopter and they fell down twice in the series of that 1-minute video. So, and that's me with the penguins that day. And I talk about them being clumsy, but right before this, I actually fell and scraped my knee and didn't notice because I was trying to go watch the penguins. So we both fell that day. These are the orcas going after penguins, which is actually pretty rare. Most of the time people don't think that orcas go after penguins, just seals. But there are like 3 different subgroups of orcas. They're the same breed, but they don't interbreed with each other. And so some of them go after seals and penguins, some go after penguins, and some go after seals. So obviously these ones are actively hunting these penguins. And if you guys have ever watched Frozen Planet, their second one is out now, and it has a great demonstration on how they actually hunt. They use waves to kind of knock everything off the ice. And this was right outside of town, so they were able to capture this image just one day when everyone was watching it. These are some of our other animals. It's hard to see the sea spider over here. It's not actually a spider, it's more like a crab, but it looks like a spider, and they can get pretty big. And then up here on the right we have a sea urchin, just like the ones we have here. They did 3D print him a little cowboy hat because they like to collect stuff to put on themselves. And then there's a sea slug down in the left corner. Some more, sea anemone, a sea star, things that I just would not expect to be down there with being how bright they are.
How cold is the water?
So when it's frozen, it's about 28 degrees because that's as cold as it can get. Well, it might get colder. When it's not frozen, it's just over 28 degrees because that's as cold as it can get up to the freezing point. So I'm not sure how cold it gets when it's frozen. It is not warm. We were not allowed to go in it. At certain points they are. I think Palmer Station you can do like a polar plunge, and the same with a lot of the cruise ships. They do a polar plunge supported by their, medical teams. But it is definitely cold water. Housing-wise, you can have both upper and lowercase housing. Lowercase is for the people who are just getting started down there. You can have up to 1 to 4 roommates. If you're in the uppercase housing, you probably only have 1 roommate. I was in a 3-person room, but we got really lucky, and we only have a 3rd roommate for 1 night. So that was great. And then usually you share a bathroom. It depends on kind of what situation you're in. This was an example. This was my room. So I had a bunk bed above me, but like I said, we only had a person in it for 1 night. And then over here on the right, you can kind of see a much nicer setup. She's got a whole projector screen with her bed and some candles and that kind of stuff lit up in their room. And then this is the view from the stairs up to my dorm. So you can actually see the construction happening in the background of the big machinery. And that's an example. This is my coworker's dorm room. He would have people over for holidays and stuff. So we were all able to sit in there. So it was big enough to spread out. So he was in the uppercase. Food is the most important thing down there. On the left, you'll see our Thanksgiving meal. Everything you would have at a normal Thanksgiving dinner, they went all out for. And then on the right, that's just a typical Taco Tuesday, nachos, tacos, everything, always at lunch. We also had bean days, so they did a Taco Bell action station where they made things like Taco Bell would. And then on the right, every morning we have an egg bar. You can get eggs made anyway, basically, except for poached. And then they thought they were funny and they put free egg samples. Just ask our egg guy. All of our food is free. So this is Christmas dinner with the king crab legs, which was really exciting. We also had lobster that day. We had like 4 different kinds of chocolate truffles for dessert that evening. Lots of gingerbread, everything. And of course I sampled all the dessert. This was, I can't remember what holiday this was for, but it's matzo ball soup, a lot of the different kugel, everything. And that was really exciting because it was actually the first time I had had matzo ball soup, and it was delicious. They did a great job. Some of the other meals. We had brunch every Sunday morning, which was a big charcuterie board and, tuna and all sorts of things. And then that was one of our action stations, which was always exciting. They did a big Asian-style bowl. They also, you can order birthday cakes, so they let you order one cake a season. This was for our friend Chris, and he actually, I met him my first day in New Zealand, and he said, "Where are you from?" And normally I don't tell people where I'm from, like with the town name, because they don't know where Gold Beach is. And I said, "Southern Oregon." And he said, "But where in Southern Oregon?" I said, "30 miles above California." And he said, "But where?" And he said, "Gold Beach." And he said, "Come to our breakfast, we'll come to your fire." I said, "I'm on the other side of the world from Gold Beach right now. How do you know our breakfast slogan for the fire department?" And he had visited as a bike tour guide way back in the day. He actually has the t-shirt still from the fire department breakfast. So I thought that was funny. And this is me eating on a very long hike because that's the best way to stay warm, is to get calories in your body. So we also have a lot of clubs and activities. We have a yacht club, language clubs, watercolor clubs, basically anything that anyone wants to start. So here's an example of our whiteboard on a given day, just some of the activities that are available throughout the day. Coffee, the library, Catholic Mass, we had an abs class that day, open volleyball, lots of things. This is our chili cook-off. This is the Yacht Club's booth from Ice Stock, which is our big festival, which I'll talk about after holidays. An example of a display from our museum. They put on a museum in our cafeteria one day. I volunteer that day with the fuels team, so you can also volunteer with departments, either to kind of scope out jobs you might like, or just to have fun for the day. So this is my day off, and I went out with them, and I got to help fuel the fuel bladders. So that's that behind me, and this is carting off the fuel hose, which was super heavy. That's from our museum. Back in the day, they had a straight jacket there. They don't use that anymore. And then on the right is our other museum displays, including one of a bowling alley that used to be set up down there that's no longer, but people also put on plays. So this was just something that somebody did in their off time. They put together a play, wrote the script, had people come audition, and then put it on. And that was really fun. She also did a murder mystery party. That is the lineup from our music festival. It went for like 9 hours. And that happens every New Year's, and I have photos from that as well as we go through here. Our gingerbread competition, and then just some displays that happen in our laboratory. So there are some displays in the hallway that you can go and look at. That's one of the isopods that also lives under the ice. And then planes, trains, and automobiles. So the U.S. military supports us a lot with vehicles. So this is the U.S. Coast Guard's only active icebreaker right now, I think. It's quite big and quite old. It comes down once a year and it helps break up the ice in our bay, which helps us get our vehicles in for vessel. So we offload a bunch of goods every year in February, and then we also put all of our trash on those goods to be brought back to the U.S. because you can't leave any trash, any waste down there, including like human waste. All goes back on a boat, and these guys help break that port up and then also bring in a dock if we don't have an ice dock made up. And that's a whole engineering feat in and of itself. That is one of our vessels. You can see the 3 large cranes up in the back as they're offloading things. This is the inside of those ships. So actually, it seems really small until you realize that this is a whole truck. So it's multiple stories worth of vessel and goods and food and all sorts of stuff. It's one of our snow machines. We were able to go on a field trip where they taught us how to drive them and took it up to the side of the volcano. Not very far up, but just far enough to, they call it room with a view, just far enough to get the view of the volcano. And it was really fun to drive those, of course. You can't go as fast as you want because the speed limit in Antarctica is 25 miles an hour. This is one of our big rigs, and the woman I'm standing with, she is actually the big rig driver. As you can see, the wheels are taller than us, and this helps transport all of our people off of our airfield. So we have an airfield on the ice, and that drives us about an hour back to the station. This is our way out. This is the LC-130 that the Air Force drives down there for us. So we were able to go in the cockpit when it flew, and then also that's just the layout of the plane. There's a lot more leg room than in a regular commercial flight. So I sat on the side and could just spread my legs out.
Good talk.
Yeah. Here's one of our vessel ships also on the inside. You can see we're on top of kind of this fuel tank here. Another one of our big transport vehicles. We also do a lot of sports. So Christmas Day we have a softball tournament. We also have a dodgeball tournament. This is from the morning of our marathon. So they do a marathon. Shackleton was one of the original explorers down to Antarctica. And so I made signs because I was not going to run this. So I said Shackleton couldn't have run 26 miles. And even if you go slow, you're faster than the seals. So Ethan actually ran that morning. I did not. That's from our dodgeball tournament. So that's our big gym. As you can see, you can fit a lot of activities in there: basketball, soccer, many things. That's from our 1K. It was not an officially sanctioned event, but I did run it. It was the only one I did run. And we always take any excuse we can to wear costumes. So a lot of people are wearing costumes here. More from our 1K. This is from hiking. So this was a specific hike on the sea ice that you can only do up till November usually, because then it starts getting too melted. And green and red flags mean you can follow that trail. If it's a black flag or a blue flag, then you cannot. The black flags mean that there's a crevasse or an animal or a science project going on nearby. And then the blue flags are fuel lines, so you don't really want to follow those anyways. But these ones we could follow because they're green and red. And then there's more from the easiest hike on station, which just takes you out to the port over here. Eventually all of this was water. This was still early enough in the season that it was sea ice. This is from the sea ice hike, so this one took quite a while. And eventually it was also all water and you could not walk on it. This was just straight uphill from where we are at station. It's a huge hill overlooking the base. This is my coworker, and a little puddle of ice right there. That's overlooking the whole ice shelf there and the Royal Society Mountains on the background. Scooting down on the trail on my butt because it was iced over and I did not want to fall. They made fun of me for this and then promptly fell right afterwards. So I felt pretty good about that choice. Up in the background we have Castle Rock, and then just behind that the active volcano. Also, I realize I'm probably running way over on time. I don't know. Do you have more business?
No, we're done with the business. How does everyone feel? How much longer do you have?
I can skip through a bunch of photos pretty fast.
Do we have the drawing?
I can also just answer questions too if people want at this point.
Let's,
That's
have you covered the basics?
yeah, most of the work life and sports life.
Okay, why don't we do it this way, if it's okay with everyone? Why don't we do the drawing, and then why don't you go ahead and answer questions that might come up, and then people can leave with you.
Perfect.
Pull the ticket,
Okay.
the last three numbers.
742.
That would be Mary.
That's Mary.
Oh, good.
Somebody want to draw the card out for Mary?
I'll put something right here. Wait, where'd it go? Okay, Mary, 7. Sorry, Mary.
Okay,
How
how
many
many
cards are
natives
left?
live there?
How many? So not very many natives at all. There's only 2 civilian communities in Antarctica. They are south of South America. I think they were before the treaty, so I think that's why it's allowed. Other than that, there has never been any original people in Antarctica, because back when it was habitable was when the dinosaurs still roamed. So other than that, there are no native communities. Yeah. Any questions?
How did you get this job?
Yeah, so I became really interested. I saw a post about it on TikTok, which sounds silly, but after I realized that there were support positions available, I went ahead and went on their website, which I do have a copy of here if anyone wants to look at the website. And I just started applying for anything I thought I was qualified for. And so once you've spent one season down there, it becomes a bit easier to further connect and keep going down. I probably applied for 14 jobs and got called back for 1. This year it was a little bit easier to get hired because we had slightly more people that left in previous years due to like COVID and other things, not calling as many people back. But yeah, so I applied for a lot before I was ever heard anything.
Are you going back?
I am. In August, I'll be going back down, which will be right before the summer season, and I'll be in lodging, so I'll get to help room everybody. And I'll be there for a little bit longer, so I'm hoping to see some more darkness.
You have dog teams like Iditarod?
They used to use dogs and horses down there, but I
Horses.
think the 80s, they decided no more dogs, no more horses, because they were non-native species, and everyone signed the treaty and agreed that they can no longer import animals down. But they used to, and a lot of the airfields, so like if you're flying in an airplane, they have little checkpoints you drive past or whatever. Those are named after a lot of the dogs that came down, which is really cool.
So no pets whatsoever?
No pets, absolutely none. We can't even get close to a penguin. If a penguin approaches you, that's one thing, but you can't move to scare it any further. So if a flock of penguins approaches you, you just have to kind of wait till they move on, which does happen because they're not that terrified of humans.
Was the COVID on the island?
So we did have it. This year they didn't isolate everyone on the way down. Previous years they have. And they did test us before we came down, but as you know, sometimes those tests show negative before they show positive. So we did have a pretty big influx of it, kind of right around Halloween, and they were isolating the people that had it, and then it got too big of a population and they couldn't isolate everyone anymore. So we did wear masks for a while. It was kind of off and on. And then when those numbers went down, we'd go without masks again for a while. So it's kind of depending on that. And actually, we had a period of time where they didn't have any flights come down because they were trying to make sure that all those cases could cycle through. Which I know affected actually somebody from Gold Beach because she was scheduled to come down during that period, and it was a 2-week hold, and then she couldn't come down. Yeah.
Are you responsible for your own transportation getting there?
No, they pay for your transportation. They also pay per diem. So I got stuck in New Zealand for 12 days before they could get me down, which was actually just like a paid-for mini vacation.
Yeah.
They pay for you as soon as the day after you land, you start training. So we did a couple online trainings, and then basically after that it was just waiting for the plane and the weather to be ready. So the weather did change a couple times, and my flight that I was on got canceled. So we had a 10-hour round trip to Antarctica and back without getting out. And that was disappointing. We call it a boomerang flight because it goes there and comes right back. But so they do pay for that. They pay per diem while you're there. And then they pay for it on your way back, and you can actually choose to extend your stay if you want to travel somewhere, and you just have to fly out of the town they fly you into. So I actually traveled for a month afterwards as well.
To be young.
Wow, did you sell a lot of snow cones?
Oh man, so many.
We got rich from that,
Yeah. We didn't sell any, but they did have ice cream in the galley. Any other questions? And if you guys have any questions about the jobs on the website or anyone's interested, I do have some contact information here and the link to the job website.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.